There is a very clear distinction between who is a refugee and who is a militia. Refugees are not a threat.
Let us look at refugees as people who can be a contribution to our economy.
National security is a concept which equips the state with the responsibility of protecting its citizens. Such protection must come diplomatically, economically, politically, and even when it comes to military power.
From what has been talked and what we are talking of refugees as militias, there is a very clear distinction between who is a refugee and who is a militia.
Refugees are not determined on a basis on that they flee the country to come and cause terror attacks. Those are terrorists, not refugees. Refugees are people who flee their countries on a basis of fear of discrimination or persecution based on race, gender, political affiliations and the such, not to cause terror attacks.
We have realized that some refugees are not registered with the UNHCR, United Nations Human High Commissioner for Refugees. And also, secondly, Mr. Speaker, some have left camp without movement passes and without consulting the authorities.
Any parent, any refugee parent will have to prove that if they have the urge to become the citizens of Kenya, they'll have to forward their requirements to the local authorities. So we'll be working with the local authorities, the security officers at the camps. They'll be able to forward the requirements to the registered persons.
We are not as the opposition in any contravention with the motion as it is. What we have as a problem is the subsidiary steps they are introducing in order to effectualize what they have said. For example, the 5-year period they are putting in place. But Mr. Speaker, we have a very clear provisions in our Constitution and in the Citizenship and Immigration Act. And the provision is 7 years, Mr. Speaker. When you start putting other 5 years, Speaker, without, for example, amending the Constitution and amending the Citizenship Act, Mr. Speaker, that is a problem. Mr. Speaker, the Constitution guarantees that right. And you're not against the Constitution. This Constitution was passed by the people of Kenya, and the Article 2 of the Constitution makes it the supreme law of the land, Mr. Speaker. As the opposition, we believe in a country that respects the rule of law, Mr. Speaker.
So, my educated member of opposition, let me tell you, when you ask about a prima facie, when you come to our country, you are an asylum seeker and you go through processes until you become a recognized refugee. So, and it takes 30 days. So 5 years, which is the recommended time by the government, by then you shouldn't be asking issues about prima facie. The fact that you bring that as an issue on the floor means you do not even know what you are educating us about. And then, Mr. Speaker, not taken. And then, Mr. Speaker, the member of government has come here and told us that it's a confused period. What do you mean it's a confused period? When a child is born, it's born of a Kenyan and a refugee parent. So there is a Kenyan parent in position, Mr. Speaker. And these 5 years, we are saying if there is love is blind, people fall in love at whatever time, we do not get to decide that. When you are of a parent, if you are a Kenyan and a refugee parent, we are going to look at the record of the refugee parent for the previous 5 years.
The Prime Minister has stated why they want to give citizenship to these children. But, Madam Speaker, what policies has the government set in place to ensure this is done in accordance with the law, in a procedurally fair? Madam Speaker, we cannot ignore the intercultural differences between Kenyan citizens and the sending state's citizens. Has the government, for instance, through the Department of Refugees Affairs, taken part in negotiations with the sending state to ensure that they are okay with these children being citizens of Kenya? The government does not outline such policies. Such questions are not just hypothetical, they are real world questions. And if this debate is to proceed in a real world context, not in a vacuum, then the government must answer such questions. Second, in not supporting this motion, citizenship is not the solution to the security issues. This government has obligations through international treaties such as the 1951 Refugee Convention. It owes an obligation to its partners, including the sending states, to ensure that the very reasons as to why refugees exist are solved. if there is security issues in the sending states, what does the government do to solve that? To create an environment where, according to the definition of a refugee in Article 1 of the Refugee Convention, there is no fear anymore. What has the government done in such a manner to sort out the conditions in the sending state before granting these children citizenship in Kenya? The government, for instance, has not shown us whether the parents, both parents, the Kenyan citizen and the sending state citizens, have been consulted. What are their views on this motion? Madam Speaker, these are real questions this House must answer before this motion proceeds.
The motion before this House, Mr. Speaker, seeks to enforce a constitutional provision. The government of Kenya in 2010 enacted a constitution mandated by its sovereign people, giving the constitution the authority to grant citizenship to a child born within either within Kenya or outside Kenya, but for as long as one of the parents is what? Is a Kenyan citizen. So therefore that first of all qualifies this motion, and the opposition does not seek to disqualify. The opposition, Mr. Speaker, is disturbed by the manner in which the government seeks to amend the constitution without the involvement, the due process. The government talks about the awarding in 5 years, Mr. Speaker, citizenship. The citizenship to a child born out of a non-Kenyan is granted at birth in the constitution. The citizenship to a refugee person by the provisions of the Citizenship Act of 2006, Mr. Speaker, is after 7 years and on application, Mr. Speaker. Within that presence, let me teach you the law. Within that presence, Mr. Speaker, within those provisions, Mr. Speaker, the Immigration and Citizenship Act reiterates the same provisions of 7 years. But Mr. Speaker, I don't wish to delve into the logistics of the law with this honorable House, because the law is already very clear. In these provisions, Mr. Speaker, the opposition wishes to seek to adduce a procedural manner in which this recognition and the rights of this child can be upheld. In that perspective, Mr. Speaker, the following have to fall in place, in clarity, that irrespective of the birth of the child, we also need to look at the traits, the character, the circumstances under which this child was born. After we have looked into that, for instance, the marriage might have been through coercion. Fraudulent means so that they acquire citizenship. Also, the marriage the child might have been as a result of instances of violations of either the refugees' rights or the Kenyan citizens' rights. We know them, Mr. Speaker. All those violations that will lead to production of a child, we need to look into them and categorize these children as to the next point of the enjoyment of their rights. The next point I wish to put into this, Mr. Speaker, is that in as much as we say the child is born of a refugee and a Kenyan, we also know that the Constitution allows for dual citizenship, but dual citizenship is only practical in countries with reciprocative. We risk, Mr. Speaker, to deny this child a right to choose citizenship in the event that his refugee parents' home country does not allow for dual citizenship. In that event, then, we deny this child the provision of choosing citizenship, and therefore we might render him stateless. Such are things that the government has failed to indicate to this country.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, in the House at large. I stand here in my position as the leader of opposition to oppose this motion that this House will take all functions from the UNHCR. Now, the opposition's stand is that this House will not take away any function from the UNHCR. Now, the member who has just left the floor talked about funds. It is going to withdraw the funding from the UNHCR. Now the government has made us aware that there is funds, such that when we take away the funds, when we withdraw the funds from the UNHCR, we will still actually have a lot of money to use. What do they say about unity strength? Why don't we take these funds, add them to what UNHCR is giving, so that we actually have something better? It does not make any sense. And okay, so just as been mentioned by the government, the UNHCR provides funds. These funds, what are they used for? These funds are used to maintain the campsites. These funds are used in relocation, resettlement of refugees. If we withdraw these funds, what are we going to do? Where are we going to get these funds? The government only mentioned the funds, the 30% of the funds got from the oil in Turkana. How much is that? How much is that going to last? Now, the UNHCR also always provides a way forward in times of crisis. Now take an example of the recent cases in Kenya where this government was forcefully deporting Somalis back to their country. This is something that they were doing under the water. Had UNHCR not come up and clearly defined that no refugee should not be deported, then what would have happened? This is a crisis that was happening right under our nose by this same government that is proposing that UNHCR is not doing anything. Isn't this a motive to hide under their own sin? They do not want anyone to pick it out. Now,
than my mother taking good care of me. I've reached of age, I feel like I should take care of my own stuff. If I decide to take care of my own stuff, is that a problem? UNHCR has tried their best. They have tried helping these refugees. But we as a country, we feel like it's time they let us do it because we are capable. The member of the leader of opposition just left the floor and said that the UNHCR just said that they can't, they are a mother of many people and they can't provide for all, so they can only manage a few. And then she goes on telling us that they can fully fund, all they need is land. So if only land is what they need, then why are those people overcrowding there? Why do you have full shortage in those camps? Why do you have all that if UNHCR is taking care of everything? And that's why the government thinks it's time the government to do that job, because we are capable. How are we going to do it? The member of the Prime Minister just told you very well we're going to get the money. We are going to roll this thing in 2 years' time. And we are not going to even cost much. What we are making, the refugees, instead of feeling isolated in the camps, they start feeling part of our country. They start being citizens of our country. They start building our country economically. Mr. Speaker, on the deportation of refugees, like going back to Syria, that was the case in Syria. They went back. It's so sad they were sent back. But then in Kenya here, we are not sending anyone away. And even on the parameters which you were saying, we are bringing these people inside. We are integrating these people to be part of us. Yes, your point of information. Exactly, a very good point made, Mr. Speaker, but that point was done 1 year ago when they were in the government. We just came in the other day. On the economic implications, Madam Speaker, we just say that we are going to integrate these people. The latest process that the Prime Minister said, once in 2 years' time we've made these people to be part of our citizens, they will be integrated in jobs, they'll be doing business, will they be taxed, and all through that, Mr. Speaker, and the House at large, we will be generating income. On the social implication part of it, Mr. Speaker, these people have culture. They come from Sudan, they come from Somali, they come from all parts of Africa, Madam Speaker. And if you integrate all the cultures from this part, are we not going far? Sit on it. I'm more informed than you are. So, Mr. Speaker, I'm very glad that we have this type of government here. A government that knows that it's time that these refugees don't feel left out. They feel they are part of this country. They feel like they are involved in every matter that happens in this country. And believe me, you not, the moment that we start thinking like that, we are going far. The UNHCR provides material assistance to the refugees. By material assistance, I mean they provide food, they provide shelter, they provide the medical attention, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this government cannot, at this level, the government cannot provide all these services, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, for that reason, I would like to oppose this and say that the UNHCR should continue with these roles in this country, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the government has not laid any basis upon which they are going to ensure they better the lives of these people, Mr. Speaker. They have just come here and give us statistics, gave us the stories they have been giving us, Mr. Speaker, without any proof that they are going to better the lives of these people, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, for that, we strongly say that the UNHCR should continue with what it's doing in this country, Mr. Speaker. The UNHCR enables us, plays a good role in resettling these people, in repatriating them, Mr. Speaker. You see, they are the ones who establish better conditions for these people. They know where these people can live better. Like, you can see the way the Dadaab camp is located near Somalia, Mr. Speaker. The Kakuma is located near South Sudan, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, the UNHCR knows why it does that, Mr. Speaker.
I've been digesting this motion, sitting on my chair, getting disappointed, and rearranging my thoughts to reconsider whether we have a different mandate from legislating laws, putting down policies that are going to be sustainable, policies that are going to ensure that the rights of the refugees are not violated, the rights of the citizens of this nation are not violated. I wish to engage this House in the following debate. I am perturbed by the opposition, especially the deputy opposition leader, when he claims that the UNHCR has the mandate to designate places for camps in this nation. It is very clear that refugees in this nation are considered statutory refugees subject to the enactment of the 2006 Refugee Act of Kenya, which manages. This Refugee Act, Your Honor, establishes the Refugee Department, the Refugee Affairs Department, which has a committee chaired by the Commissioner. This Commissioner has the responsibility to gazette the designated areas for reception and campsites. So therefore, that is just a very misinformed position for the opposition to stand with. The history of refugees in this nation dates back to 1994, when there was an influx of refugees from the DRC, when there was an influx of refugees from the genocide in Rwanda, when there was the 91 coup d'etat of Siad Barre in Somalia, and the influx of the refugees. That time the UNHCR had all the mandates for reception, registration, and refugee determination. With time we have seen the issues of insecurity coming up, issues of terror attacks coming up to our nation, and the government came in to give a helping role in registration and refugee determination by establishment of this particular committee. So therefore, that way, to talk about the results that have been built over time, Your Honor, to this House, that the results of the UNHCRC can be seen, and the results are trumped by the insecurity, the loss of lives of citizens of this nation, as the government we watch, really defeats our argument. At this point in time, I wish to bring this House to think about the mandate of the UNHCR that includes reception, reconciliation of refugees with the citizenry, registration world over, considering the situation in Syria, considering the situation in Turkey, the situation around Afghanistan, and right now the European nations, especially Germany, are overwhelmed by the influx of refugees. So if we keep the UNHCR here, yet we took a very bold step in making a legislation that will put in place measures within which the government will be able to commensurately control the entry, the registration, the activities of the refugees, the funding of the refugees. These are all provisions of the 2006 Act, which is in tandem with the 1951 Convention on the Rights of the Refugees, of course a document of the UNHCR.
You seem to have forgotten all the roles that UNHCR brings except the funds. That's not the only thing they do to us. Have you forgotten that these people foster unity? These people, if they hold us together, how many members? There are very many countries which are part of the UNHCR. These people have helped to control wars. They have helped to promote peace within very many countries, not to mention our very own, Mr. Speaker. When we were falling apart during the post-election violence, the UN, which UNHCR is part of, they came in and they helped us and they brought us back on our feet. Again, not taken. Again, Mr. Speaker, another thing that these people do, they provide order. They have stipulated laws. They have ways and protocols to be followed that help us
that help us in everyday activities as far as refugees are concerned. So when you come here and tell us you're going to remove them because of funds, I'm afraid, but you have not answered us as to who is going to hold us together, and we are very poor in fostering unity, Africans especially. You have seen the wars that come over and over again over people that are holding us together. Let us not forget, UNHCR is not a country-based organization, so it's not biased. There is no time that it is going to bring division in our country. Again, Mr. Speaker, I want to tell these people they are simply absurd when they tell us that they are going to come here and absorb the refugees as citizens, and then the same government comes here and tells us they are going to repatriate their so-called citizens. Let me remind you, charity begins at home. And with your current situation of striking teachers and all the issues with funds, I do not think you're in a position to stand and brag about how rich your government is enough.
When laws are passed in parliament, the opposition is included and the government is included. The Refugee Act establishes clearly a department of refugee affairs. Funds will be channeled there. They won't get lost. They will go to the refugees. So on that point, I think the government wins it. The second point, let me just inform you, I'll give you time to inform you. The second point was on the point of the immigration department and issuing of identification cards and everything. We've always had national security issues due to poor registration, borders and everything. What we are saying that is want to make this registration very categorical, very specific. I mean, if you can give people a national identification card, what about giving a refugee status card? It's very simple. We'll do that. We are so much important. We can give both a refugee and a citizenship card, depending on what we decide. We started very well. We will give a citizenship card, but that does not say we cannot give a refugee card. If you can give a citizenship card, you are not bound for not giving a refugee card. On my second point, the second point I found as a point of contention was the point of contention that we will be at loggerheads with the UN. I think the UN's responsibility is all about peace. It's to demonstrate peace. If we are going to work, they should see us work. I mean, let's give us the opportunity. And the UN, after they've seen us work, they'll congratulate us. After we talk about the responsibility and do the work, they will congratulate us. On the points of funds, I've said, as a government, the funds we are directing to other places, or we are trying, for example, to channel to the UNHCR, which were being directed to other relief, can then be directed into the then established body of the established body by an act of this House. The Department of Refugee Affairs. It is an act of this House. The second, the another argument I found that was in contention was the argument about the repatriation of Somalis.
You have been told clearly that we need to continue working with the UNHCR because this is a way of promoting peace, and they are the people that watch over wars. They have helped us in this country when we had 2007 post-election violence, and that is why we had peace. I don't know why right now we want to bite the hand that feeds us. They helped us. Let us continue to work with them as they help us and help the rest of the world. We have also said clearly that the UNHCR helps to provide order. Countries can do what they want if there is no one watching over them. This is why we want to say, let's continue to work with the UNHCR so that we do not mess up and do things just the way we want, so that there is order. Now, let me just look at the themes and clashes as well as the main points of contention. For one, there was the issue of funding. This was a really, really major issue. You see, the government keeps saying they want a peaceful nation, they don't want sick and starving people, and that they will get funds from oil so that they can support these refugees. But the very able opposition came here and explained clearly, want the refugees be in a better position if we can use our own funds, which we say we have, and then get more funds from UNHCR and support these refugees better. There was the theme of refugee rights. The government said we have a mandate to give citizens and refugees their rights. But the opposition came clearly and explained that the UNHCR plays as a watchdog so that government cannot do as it pleases, and gave us the example of what happened in Turkey with the current Syrian crisis. Now, the Kenyan government could mess up if the UNHCR is not watching over the things they're doing. That is why we do not want to leave the UNHCR. We presented the fact that, as the opposition, that the UNHCR works as a link. We say we use the term, it is the mother of charity organization. It connects us to charity organizations so that those charity organizations can come into the country and help these refugees, because they're being linked by who? The UNHCR. Do you think we will have any other way of connecting with these charity organizations if we take away the UNHCR? We will not be able to link with them. And may I inform you, do you know what the government had to say about that? They said nothing, because they know it is the truth. They know it is the truth. They know we established the link, and they know we need UNHCR. So at this juncture, I believe it is clear that the opposition has carried the day. We need the UNHCR. Let us continue to work with the UNHCR. And with those remarks, I rest my case. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's been a great 2 days. And I want to take this opportunity to invite our hosts. But before I do that, I want to acknowledge some of the partners, but also people that have made these 2 days a great 2 days. As Amnesty International, we have had the opportunity to interact this way with young people in various universities this year for the 4th time. And some of the partners joined us this year because of what we have done in the past. And Mr. Vice Chancellor Professor Kaleli, this year we are here on